We are now live on Facebook. So welcome everyone.
Hello.
And tonight I am excited to be helping host this conversation with parents regarding the back to school conversation we've all been having. If you have any questions for Carla or for the panelists during tonight's presentation, feel free to chat them in the Zoom chat if you're in Zoom, or comment on the live post on Facebook. I'll be queuing those up for Q&A at some breaks in the content as well. So again, feel free to join the conversation. And I'm excited to introduce you to Carla Bailey-Smith, who is running as a delegate for Illinois 88th. Carla?
Thank you, Kelsey, as always, for helping us with our technology and keeping track of what's going on the Facebook Live, so that whoever I'm having the conversation with, we can concentrate on our conversation. I appreciate your work with us, Kelsey. So thank you everybody for joining us on a Friday night. If you are watching on Facebook Live, I encourage you to start a watch party or to share it with friends, especially with parents. All of us have been having these conversations on Facebook, just like we've all been living our lives online, and we haven't been able to gather as we might normally have over drinks to talk about how hard something is. Obviously, we all miss that. This has been one of the hardest decisions, one of the hardest conversations that we've had to have. And I am really happy that Julie Lynd is a friend of mine who I met when our boys were 3 years old in preschool. And Julie and I have done a lot of marching and advocating and working for a better world for our kids together. So Julie, thank you for joining us. And if you can remember that phrase that you said that really caught my attention, something about death and death. Do you remember that?
I saw that in your notes just before the meeting, so I went and looked up what possibly overly dramatic thing I said, but I might have said,
but it was perfect.
I have questions about District 87's back to school plan. I currently sense that my choices are between a death trap and the death of public education as we know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I laugh at myself, but I would still kind of stand by that. I think that the plans for reopening are ridiculously unsafe for students and teachers, and I am not at all reassured that Edmentum is the way to go for online options.
Right, right. So what prompted you to start that big list of questions? Did it just start out as a few and then it just grew and grew?
I've been admittedly obsessing about this all summer.
Okay, yes.
I've been thinking a lot, over and over again about how higher education should work. I work at Illinois State, I teach, and I, was part of the whole crisis migration online. At the same time that I was trying to plan the courses I was teaching last spring, I was planning an online version of it. So I've been thinking a lot about online pedagogy versus face-to-face, just what you can do well and not so well in different environments and different modalities, and just kind of obsessing about what I thought would happen in the fall. And I'm friends with a lot of teachers, and my sister's a teacher, and so I've been thinking about the K through 12, and of course I have children, and for a while, higher education is one set of challenges, and K through 12 has seemed an even greater set of challenges, I think. So I don't envy anybody trying to make the decisions about what to do. There's so much pressure on so many people for so many things, and in public education systems that have been consistently defunded for decades. So that doesn't get easier when funding is still not forthcoming.
Right.
In ways that it ought to be. But so, I read the plan, and I knew I wasn't going to be thrilled with whatever happened, because I know that everybody's strapped, and it was, probably not going to be an ideal scenario, but I was just my jaw dropped as I read the District 87 plans, and I thought, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I had the same reaction. I'm like,
face to
what do you
face, and then the
mean?
remote option is this company that you're telling me nothing about. I just was horrified, and I also had just read through the whole uh, document that several folks at ISU presented to the administration about their concerns about the
Okay,
administration's
right.
ISU
So that
plan
was
to
fresh.
reopen.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen it, there's a document circulating around there somewhere that has really very well documented responses to what ISU's initial Redbirds Return plan that was released to students and faculty and staff in the community. And it sort of went kind of point by point through all of that, and didn't take my tack of asking questions, but really documented, well, if you want to do this safely and equitably, here's what needs to happen. And so, I've thought a lot about all the logistical issues and all that. So the questions came pretty easily. I whipped them out in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I shared them just to Facebook, and I posed them as a list to the District 87, if you have questions, contact. And, once I post them on Facebook,
they're
several
out
people
there.
contacted me privately, and a few people said publicly, please, do something more with this. So
yeah.
then the pressure was on to do something more with it.
Yeah. Well, we got, so the results we got today at like 5 or 6 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. Yeah.
5 o'clock today.
Might have been 4 o'clock, actually. I'll give them credit, 4 o'clock.
Well, I got them from you about somewhere between 5 and 6 o'clock. That they have gone through and answered every single question. And at first glance, it seems like a lot of the concerns about testing and about what's going to happen when somebody in the school, whether it's a teacher or a student, when someone gets diagnosed with COVID, what do we do? And their answer for everything is that they're leaving it up to the county health department, which is, I suppose, a fair answer. But, as a parent, it does concern me a little bit that they don't actually have a written action plan for that.
Yeah, I mean, if I would like to hear from the McLean County Health Department.
Right.
What exactly is their plan for handling schools?
Yes.
Are they going to be able to do increased testing? Would they encourage families to test every so often? What kind of contact tracing are they going to be able to do? One thing that came out in the UHI parent meeting the other day, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting anybody's words here, but my understanding was that, and I feel reasonably confident that they are going to be able to impose 6-foot social distancing between students in their classes, not necessarily in the hallways, but at least in the classes. They seem confident that they have the number, that they've got the measurements and the space to be able to do that. So that's a good thing. But the question about contact tracing also came up, and also it's the county health department that would take care of that. And my understanding is that if you haven't been within 6 feet of somebody, then they're not a close contact. So if your classroom has been safely socially distanced, I would like to ask whoever can tell me, I don't know who it is, are they still going to contact everybody in that person's class?
Right.
I mean, to me, yeah, if I don't come in within 6 feet of somebody that I interacted with at the grocery store for 5 minutes, that's different than sitting in a classroom.
Yes.
I want to know if one of my kids' classmates gets sick.
Yeah. I agree with you there.
So I'm worried about that, and probably nobody really. I don't know what answers there are, I guess.
Well, I'm gonna ask the audience if there's anybody in the audience listening who works for the McLean County Health Department and might have an idea of what they would do. And if not, then we've posed the question, and I'll certainly email the McLean County Health Department this evening and say, hey, we had this discussion tonight, and this question came up because the certainly the District 87 answer is, well, that's the McLean County Health Department's job. So a school situation is something slightly new and different because we haven't been had any in-person learning since the 13th of March. So I hope that the McLean County Health Department will be ready to deal with whatever happens.
My hope is that they have the resources to deal with it. I mean, I think everybody I've talked to wants to do the right thing and keep everybody as safe as they can. But do they have the resources to do what they need to do?
Yeah, that's also an excellent question. Now, I know that Julie has 2 sons, and one of them is at U High, and one of them is a freshman at Bloomington High School in District 87. So that's two different high schools, 2 different sizes, 2 different situations. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience what the differences were, and if you have decided, what have you decided and why? I know that's a lot of questions, but it all goes together.
Well, with the last one, I haven't decided. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I haven't either. I mean, I have and I haven't.
I know what I want to do. I don't know. Well.
Yeah. Okay, go on and share what you feel willing to share at this time, if you don't mind.
So I mean, the lab schools, when I wrote my questions about District 87, the lab schools hadn't released their plan yet, so hence I didn't include them in my set of questions. Okay. A couple folks contacted me and asked me, you know, what are we going to ask the lab schools? And then I was kind of waiting. First of all, I also have other things to do, so I hadn't tried to revamp my questions for the lab schools. And I also was waiting for them to release their plans for online only, which have just come out, I think, in writing today, and they mentioned what the plan was. There was an informational meeting last night. I think it was last night. I have questions for the lab school, but I think the fact that they're smaller and have enough space, I feel, you know, they're doing a 2-day plan, more like Unit 5s.
Right.
They answered the questions reasonably satisfactory ways. You know, I would have some follow-up questions about testing and whatnot. It's kind of the same thing. Well, it's up to McLean County Health Department. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? But what's really worrying, I have a lot of worries, but one of the things that jumps out at me every time I try to think about things is the social distancing piece. And I think with Bloomington High School, I think especially with the junior high and the high schools, I am very concerned that when they say social distancing as much as possible, which I believe comes from the ISBE language. I initially thought, I was a little sarcastic in my questions, I admit, but I thought that language came from the district, but that language comes from the ISBE guidelines,
yes,
which frankly is kind of cynical in my mind to say, yeah, maintain 6-foot distancing as much as possible. I mean, I guess a generous read would be that you've got chaotic kids and you're not going to always be able to maintain exactly 6 feet. I mean, you know, you go to the grocery store, you can't always maintain exactly 6 feet from other people. That's just, I understand that. But at the same time, if you are looking at numbers and you know the measurements of your classrooms and you know or you at least should be able to figure out what is the capacity of every classroom to approximate 6-foot social distancing. Not going to be science. People are going to move. It's not going to be perfect. Right. But to me, you should be able to fit everybody in the classroom. If you're talking about keeping them there for over an hour, you should be able to keep everybody in the classroom 6 feet apart. And if you can't do that ever, or almost ever, or in one class, but not the other 5 classes or whatever, however many they have, that to me is a pretty cynical read of that as much as possible.
Yeah.
And cynical is a kind word, I think, because it's you know, it's not fair. It's not fair to the teachers. It's certainly not fair to the teacher. What I said, not
Right.
teachers and students, but I don't know what I said.
Yeah. I saw a question pop up from Deva, who is a retired teacher, about ventilation concerns. And I did see that in the District 87 answers, that they've apparently had the air tested in the building and the ventilation is good. However, I'm also a little cynical about that, 6 feet as much as possible, because the science shows that it is sustained close proximity contact that is spreading it. And if two people, even if they're wearing a mask, if it's not, if it doesn't have a filter, if it's just a like a 2-layer scarf or a 2-layer cotton mask, it's not going to prevent everything from going out. And if you're, maybe 3 or 4 feet apart, and you're 3 or 4 feet apart for 45 minutes, yes, that's a concern.
And if you're actually discussing things and trying to talk through your mask and talking loud enough to make that happen.
Right. It's all very concerning. I'm going to go ahead and ask Kelsey if there are any more questions at this time. Sometimes I see them as they pop up, but I try and focus on the conversation and not on the text.
Thanks, Carla. There was a question. Somebody asked if they could get a copy of the answers. So
Yes.
answers were posted there in the chat. So feel free.
Oh, there you go. You've done it. Okay.
Facebook Live.
I am also going to do another public post on my Facebook. I've been busy doing other things since they came in, so I've texted them to a few people. Dr. Riley said I could share them, so there we go. It didn't occur to me to collect emails with the signatures, so I don't have any way to get the answers back that they've actually signed the document. Yeah. So I can just hope that people who shared will share again.
Right. Were there any other questions or comments at this time, Kelsey?
That is all currently.
Okay. All right. I wanted to take a minute and talk about the moral question. At first, I was thinking, well, I've got to send my kid back to school. He can't stay in this house, sat at his desk in front of his computer for another, however many months it's going to be, because that's what he's been doing since March, and we have to push him out the door every day to get outside. That was my initial feeling at first, and then I started seeing some of especially my mom friends that are also Unitarian Universalists, like Julie and I are, and we have a strong respect for the interconnected web of existence, and a couple of them posted about just the moral question about if you have the privilege to keep your child at home, then perhaps you should, as a matter of protecting, for the greater good, to keep your kid at home. But then the conundrum, the dilemma as a parent is, what is it going to do to my kid to be stuck in his bedroom for however many months of school it's going to be until there's a vaccine and people can safely congregate? So I wanted to share that, as a member of the community, and as a candidate, I want people to understand that I care, that I think about these things, that I think about how my actions impact others. And I believe you had a very similar feeling certainly with sending your son to Bloomington High School, which is likely to be a lot more crowded than U High.
Yeah, and if I could add another piece to that, I think, yeah, do I have a responsibility to help de-densify the building, right? It's
Right.
a new word,
Yeah.
this new
Yeah.
COVID word.
De-densify.
Like,
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
That's an important argument to be made. Like, you know, will it disrupt my life? Is it the best for my child? I don't know. Was the other piece I wanted to add to that? I guess I'm frustrated that we're put in the position to do that, because I wish
Yes.
that it would come from the school districts themselves to say, we can only serve a certain number of students in our buildings,
Right.
and we are going to figure out who those students are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the mechanisms are for determining, you know, the kids with the IEPs, or the kids with particular home situations, or the kids who need some sort of supervision. And it seems to me that schools could start, and I'm not making this up, I've been reading things all summer. I don't know who to attribute my ideas to at this point, but there's certainly lots of creative solutions out there for ways that this could be done much more equitably. And instead of saying, you know, well, if you can help us de-densify, or if you simply don't feel that the school is safe enough, then keep your kid home. I don't like the premise on which that's posed. I think the schools ought to be figuring out how many students they can serve, and then make the hard choices about who they can serve in that way, and then figure out how to keep everybody else virtual until it's safe enough to have more students in the building.
Right.
Or can everybody go virtual, and some students, you know, be supervised in that same virtual environment in a building because their parents are working, or because they need to get out and and then your virtual classroom experience is at least run by your district teachers, right? I mean, I know there's going to be a district teacher assigned to the Edmentum curriculum, but it's not clear to me at all what their actual role is going to be in that. How many students will be assigned to them? I mean, I know the difference between teaching an online class and administering one, worlds apart in terms of your engagement with the material and the students. So the other piece of that has really been, you know, you asked me about my own decisions and why I haven't decided. My kids are so determined to go back to school. They want to go back to school. I don't know at what point we got from, no, you have to, you know, you can't stay home, you must go to school, to, no, you must stay home, you can't go to school. I don't, like, the tables have been turned here.
Yeah.
But, you know, especially my kid going to Bloomington is really quite determined to go. And I know that he doesn't know what he wants is the pre-COVID experience that he was looking forward to. And that's not what he's going to get, but he can't grasp that any better than the rest of us can.
Yeah.
And I really wish that, I think it was another mutual friend of ours who said to me, it was one thing to tell your kid they had to stay home because everybody was staying home, because the government said, you must stay home now.
Yes.
But now it's my responsibility to say, well, your friends are going to go to school and see what it's like, but you will be staying home.
Yeah.
I'm setting myself up for some major rebellion. That's the route we go.
Right. And that's another conundrum, another dilemma is we could be sending our kids into a situation where, you know, a teacher's going to die of COVID and they're going to be traumatized by that. Or they're going to be, you know, somehow affected adversely for who knows how long with trying to do school with masks on and staying apart and not having that in-person experience that they really want, or they're going to be at home for however many more months by themselves in their room on their computer, and what is that going to do to them?
Yeah,
It's just, there's just no, there is no right answer. I mean, I knew that,
we're all in this together, and every kid's going to have their own experience of what this is. I like to think that school should be a place where a main part of the curriculum would be helping our children work through this moment in different ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is your son doing marching band?
Nope.
He's not. Okay. Mine is. And I have to say that, adding to my parental dilemma is how happy he is to be making music again.
Yeah.
And being with his friends, and they've all grown, and he talks about, I didn't recognize so and so because they were so tall and they had so much hair, and then there was somebody else who cut their hair off, and just da 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 da, and his whole demeanor was completely different. It's like my son came back to life after 2 days of marching band. So okay, Kelsey, do we have some more questions now before we bring our next guest on?
Yes, we had a comment from Deva, who shared family first. So it was back during your conversation about what to do and which choice to choose. We had a couple of comments from a person who wished to remain anonymous, who shared, "Hi, I'm a high school social worker for Unit 5 in a middle school. Even if our teachers can keep 15 kids spaced 6 feet apart and wearing their masks at the beginning of the day, how on earth can we be expected to police improper mask wearing, chewing of masks, throwing masks, refusal? It's around my neck, I'm not refusing to wear it, being a 6-foot barrier throughout the day. Our district has made the rule that students are to wear masks, and if they refuse, they are to be redirected once. If they continue to refuse, they will be sent to the office and parents called to pick up. Do you think the parents who are ready for their kids to be back at school are considering or aware of the kinds of distractions offsetting the very reason they feel it's important for their kids to be at school?"
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about all of these things. Like, we think there's going to be this regular class, but it's going to be a whole different experience, mediated not just by masks and distancing, but by the anxiety that provokes, the worry that it provokes, the way it's been politicized in crazy ways. There's going to be people refusing to wear their mask. It's going to be a thing.
Right.
And of course, it's going to be a constant distraction all day long, even if it's physically possible for people to keep their noses and mouths covered.
Right.
And
Any other
non-expert opinion? Sorry.
Yeah. Go on, Kelsey.
Another anonymous attendee, perhaps the same one. It's hard to tell. Do you think parents understand or have awareness of the social emotional cons of returning with masks? I keep hearing arguments about the social emotional effect of isolating at home, but do you think parents are considering the same effects at school being traumatic? Can't engage with friends non-verbally, can't hear friends, teachers easily, can't get close to teachers they want to feel connection with, they feel anxiety about getting COVID or seeing their teacher getting COVID, etc.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did mention that, going, our kids might be equally stressed and traumatized in ways we have yet to understand, if we allow them to go back into the school and they're forced to have a drastically different school experience than what they want and what they need and what they expect.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought more about teenagers than little kids because that's what I'm dealing with. But like teenagers, every cell in their body is about getting away from parents and touching other people. And whether it's because you're keeping them at home or they're in school with all these limitations on them, it's exactly what they can't do right now. And it's traumatic.
Yeah. We haven't even started talking about people with, what do they call it? Comorbidity is what our Illinois health director says. But, conditions that make them more susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I have somebody at home who takes immunosuppressants every day for an organ transplant. But my husband also says, I don't want my condition to keep my son from living his life, because the reality is we don't know how long it's going to be before we have a vaccine. We'll just do our best to keep careful.
Yeah.
All right, Kelsey, I think we should let Tabby join us now so we can hear another mom from a different school district. Thank you for joining us, Tabby. So Tabby lives in Morton and in Tazewell County, which is also in my state representative district. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge some different choices that might be available in Tazewell County. But I'm sure that the dilemmas are all very much the same.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on a couple of things that you guys have already talked about, actually. The way that my district is doing it seems a little bit more strict than the area districts. Originally, the area districts came out saying, you know, that there was an online choice, and that many of them were doing 5 days in person, which, you know, as a teacher and as a parent, I thought that sounded great. The district I teach and the district that I teach for also had stated that we are doing an online option. It was kind of, the way I understood, we were kind of hoping that many families would choose this online option so that we could physically distance more appropriately. But when my daughter's school, Morton, sent out a survey, there were a lot of parents that, I don't want to say a lot because I don't really know the number, but parents were concerned about not offering the online option unless you have a doctor's note or approval through the district. And that, you know, they said that all the parents in Morton are on board. You know, the majority of parents are on board with returning to school full time, so this online option isn't needed. But so the survey, they sent out the survey, and they were asking if your child would be attending in person unconditionally, if your child would be attending on conditions, if the mask rule was strict, or if there were mask breaks. Or if your child was not attending for for a medical reason or another reason, you know, was something that struck me was that 104 respondents in my community said that they were not sending their child back because of the mask requirement. So you know, they kind of surveyed parents a little bit. And then they came out with the board meeting and they explained that there is an online option. It is subject to administrative approval. And it is a third-party option. But the district has used this third-party option, or this third party for like recovery classes in the high school. So it's a program that they're familiar with. They're also,
ours, I think.
Sorry, say that again.
I think that's the same with ours. That's what they've used it before.
Okay. They're also starting to implement a new platform to prepare for, in the board meeting, they quote said, an inevitable transition to online learning. So I feel like, from what I've heard, talk to parents, you know, ISBE, talk to other teachers, it sounds like pretty much everybody understands that eventually we're going to go to online learning anyway. So we're making preparations for online learning in case it happens, because there's definitely a possibility, if not inevitability.
Inevitability, you mean like in the long term of education, or because things are going to get shut down in the next few months?
Yeah, because things are going to get shut down in the next few months. In Tazewell County, our numbers are definitely not as high as Peoria. We're not like on the at-risk list or whatever, but our numbers are increasing pretty steadily. So my daughter's district has said that they're responding based on our community need. So because our numbers are not nearly as high as, some of the bigger cities like Peoria, they didn't feel like this online option was necessary. So that's a little bit of a stark contrast between the district that I work for. So when they started to explain what we are doing, I'll kind of explain that just a little bit. You guys have already talked about the 6 feet when possible. My daughter's district is doing 3 feet when possible.
Oh.
I'm also very concerned about this when possible, what that means exactly. They have also made it clear that they do not plan. They said, according to the health department, they're going to follow the health department guidelines, but they don't intend to close the school. If someone contracts COVID, they will notify people based on direct contact for 15 minutes or longer. That was a concern for me. They are requiring masks, obviously, because it's the law, but they're also saying that there will be discipline. So I think kind of similar to how you kind of described already, Julie, about, somebody in the comments described, there's a warning and then you'll be sent home or whatever. The district that I work for, again, it's my understanding, because we've had very little, actual communication, that because online learning is an absolute choice, and we kind of, I think, are encouraging that a little bit. If students don't comply with the masks, if we have to tell them multiple times, then it's kind of like saying, this learning environment isn't working out for you, so you're going to need to do online learning. So some of our board members are not happy with the verbiage of discipline. I think the district that I work for is doing better in not calling it discipline. There's always the concern about actual compliance. And as a teacher, I know that we're going to spend a lot more time telling students to wear your mask right, or not telling students to wear your mask right, and just letting it slide. I also know that my daughter's district is allowing doctor's notes. This was something that they addressed in a Q&A session, which I'm really grateful that they did. But it was brought up by a parent that they've heard many parents already talking about their doctors are giving them excusals from wearing masks. And our superintendent has said, he said he implores doctors and families to do the right thing, but if they have a doctor's note, we have to honor it.
So if they have a doctor's note, they're going to be allowed to be in the school building without a mask?
That is what in a board meeting and a Q&A session, it seems pretty clear that they are going to allow that. I know in the district that I work for, they have said that they would provide face shields for students who can't wear masks, but they've made very clear that that's not adequate unless you have, a doctor's note.
I wonder how that lines up with the Illinois Department of Health guidelines, because my understanding was if you want to attend school in person, you have to wear a mask.
Yeah, I believe our I shouldn't quote out loud without looking at it, but I think that the answer today said also that the criteria for exceptions to the mask rule would be made based on medical exceptions.
Okay, so maybe they've got it. They've got the get out.
So that's one of
Cloths.
my concerns is how many families are getting these doctor's notes. I also know that a pediatrician in the area actually is on our school board, and he has made it clear that he does not believe that masks are effective. He believes that the pandemic is very real, but he has communicated that in a board meeting and with my understanding with parents individually. So, you know, these are all concerns for me, and my husband is a nurse. He reads avidly about medical science. We have chosen to keep her home online for the online learning platform. You know, and you asked me to kind of talk about why we made that decision, and a lot of what you've already said about, you know, the concern about distance, the concern about being in a closed space for a sustained period of time. You know, as a teacher, I've thought about this because being in a store is not the same thing as being in a classroom with students all for a prolonged period of time, especially students, you know, that don't regularly practice hygiene well.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be, you know, a lot more focus on compliance with these masks, and it's going to take away from the learning. So, you know, a lot of parents are concerned about, you know, children learn better in the classroom, but will they right now though?
Exactly.
So that's kind of why we decided, you know, I have faith that the Morton's a very good school district. It's why we moved here. So I have faith that the program that they use is going to provide adequate education for our daughter. That's not primarily my focus right now. I mean, obviously I want her to do well and learn, but I don't think that that's going to happen in the classroom as much as many people believe that it will. So, you know, I listened to a podcast by a pediatrician, and she said something that made me feel much better about the decision, because, you know, we're concerned about, just like any parent, about her falling behind. If she's at home when her peers are at school, is she going to fall behind? Or what about the social aspect? You know, they're moving on without her. But right now, everything is kind of chaotic. So there's not really a level. There's not really a standard, you know, and to imply that they're going to fall behind.
Fall behind what? We're all in this together.
That's exactly what she said. Fall behind what? That implies that we're all at some standard level, you know? So I'm much less concerned about it. And yeah, of course I'm concerned about her being at home all day by herself, because I will be at work. You know, the way that the numbers are going in Tazewell County, unless our schools go with, you know, I mean, the governor is going to cut us down to like phase 3 soon, because our region is not doing so great. But I don't know if our schools are going to, maybe that's a question I could have asked you, Carla. I don't know if our schools are going to align with, you know, the, you know, restrictions, but I don't foresee Tazewell County going that way, because our numbers aren't so high.
Right.
So, you know, I'm concerned about her being at home by herself, but like you guys have already talked about, there's so many more concerns also about her being in school, and kids are resilient. We're all going through this. It's terrible, but none of these situations are good. And I prefer her to be home where she's safe. We asked her also, you know, I mean, she's in 8th grade, she's 15. So we asked her what her preference would be. And essentially she said, you know, neither of the choices are good. So she didn't really want to make the choice. She understood that our choice was going to be online, and she was okay with that, but she didn't want to be the one to make the choice.
Yeah.
I feel her. I want somebody to tell my kids they have to stay home.
Yeah. I'm going to take a minute and ask Kelsey if there's any more questions or comments that have come up.
Yeah, Zach commented on Facebook, really just that, there's definitely no easy solution for this. And Zach shared that they feel for parents, students, and educators. So definitely lots of similar feelings out there. There was a question, do we know of any districts in the area who have decided to only do remote learning for the beginning of the year?
I am not aware of any in central Illinois.
Yeah, I know there are other districts in Illinois, but I don't know where they are.
Yeah. Julie, your sister works for Chicago Public Schools, right? Are they starting online?
No. They're doing a 2-day-a-week plan.
Okay.
With, the teachers responsible also for some online components. I don't know if there's an online option for Chicago or not.
And Tabby, what have you heard from your teacher friends?
I know that East Peoria is starting fully online for the first semester, or maybe it's just the first 3 weeks. Part of that reason is because their high school has flooding, but the entire district is starting online for the first 3 weeks, and then they're assessing. So I don't know how much of that is because of the flooding and how much is, because of COVID.
Right.
Then there was another question. Do any of you know, will parents be notified if there are unmasked students in your child?
I did not see that. Specifically addressed in the questions about unmasked students. I guess that's more a question for Tabby, if they're actually going to allow students in the building without masks. I wonder, do you have any idea if you'll know?
In the district where I teach, they are not allowing students in the building. Oh, something else I didn't talk about is the temperature checks.
Right.
But they are not allowing anyone at all, teachers included, because I know that there are some teachers who are not really on board with the masks also, but they are not allowing anyone in the building whatsoever without masks. My sister-in-law actually teaches preschool, and they're not allowing parents in the building either, so they do like a red carpet pickup, so they walk the children outside. But so as far as I know, unless they have a doctor's note, they're not allowing anyone in the building without a mask. I don't know if they're notifying parents. As a parent, I'm assuming that there's going to be, especially in Morton, I'm assuming there's going to be at least one child in every classroom that doesn't have a mask.
Yeah, I haven't heard that issue come up if that'll be reported. But since it's not even clear to me if we will find out if a child tests positive for COVID, I'm not counting on getting a phone call about an unmasked child.
Right.
In the room.
Excellent. That is all of the questions and comments at this time.
Okay. One other thing, am I muted? Can you hear me? Okay. It looks like I'm muted on my little square there. One other thing that I wanted to talk about was the online learning platform. And for Unit 5 in District 87, this is called Edmentum. And I know that some of my friends have had time to really look at the choices online for Edmentum. I have not had time to do that because I'm running a campaign, and I tend to be busy with other things. I skimmed it last night, looking at the choices. It looks like there's a lot of choices, but a big part of my hesitation is that this is not the District 87 teachers that I expected my son to have. He is signed up for, qualified for, tested into AP World History and AP English, and it is impossible for him to have that experience on an online learning platform that's not taught by the District 87 teacher that is supposed to teach AP English and AP World History, because, you know, at orientation, you know, we actually had an orientation before lockdown, and he was so excited to meet those teachers and to be able to work with those teachers.
My understanding is new information is that it will be district teachers teaching AP classes. I don't know about honors classes, but AP classes will be taught. I believe district teachers will be in charge of the whole content and checking in with students, and I don't know how that's going to work, but
okay.
I
And
think that's
Tabby,
a change that has happened.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about what Morton has said in their Q&A and in their board meeting. And I know that the program that they're using, Apex, they currently use, I said already that they use it for credit recovery, but the high school principal had explained that we have never used it to its fullest capacity, that there are AP classes. And I mean, the way that they described it, there's a plethora of things that we can do with this program. My daughter's only in 8th grade, so I'm not really worried about, you know, AP classes and things quite yet, but I do know, you know, she has a 504, and it's primarily for pacing and extended time and things like that. And they have said that with Apex, and actually they said that maybe it was the ISB said they recommend 5 hours of instruction at home, and 2.5 of those they expect to be real-time teaching. So that's the way that they're saying Apex will work, but that's also the way they're saying they plan to do if we have to transition the whole school into online learning. So with Apex, they have, it's a third-party program, so they have teachers, third-party, but they're also going to have the teachers in our district who are unable for some reason to work in the building will also be available, kind of assigned by case manager, sort of. I had a very brief conversation with my vice principal today, but I think that was the most information that I've really kind of gotten from it. With my daughter's 504, I feel really good about her doing it at home. It's very self-paced. So as far as like extra time, I think that won't be an issue. They've also kind of described that, you know, if a student takes 7 classes in a semester, with Apex, they might do 2 classes until they're finished and then start the next 2 classes. So it seems a little bit less overwhelming than how we did it in the spring with trying to balance all the things.
Okay.
That seems smart, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so the other thing that Julie and I were talking about with Edmentum is who's paying for it. And my understanding is that the school districts, the individual school districts, are paying for the platform that they choose to use.
Yeah,
I had
the brief answer we got in today's
in the Google
response
Doc
for D87.
And while you're looking for that, I wanted to go ahead and say that another consideration that I had when I briefly toyed with the idea of just homeschool, you know, not Edmentum, not in person, not signing my kid up for District 87, was, well, what happens if a lot of parents decide they don't want Edmentum, they don't want their kids in a school building while the pandemic is still going on, and they just homeschool? If we have a significant number of parents who choose to do that, it will eventually affect our school funding. I made a phone call trying to get that answer today. It's my understanding, and Kelsey, were you able to make that PDF something that's shareable? I sent it pretty late, so.
Yes, that'll be shareable in just 1 second here.
Okay, this is why I asked Kelsey to help, because.
While you're getting it, I have the numbers.
Okay, great. Thank
District
you.
87 says elementary license. The question was, how much is Edmentum charging the district? It is a for-profit company. I'd like to throw that out there. Elementary license is $225 per student. Secondary is $16,825 total, as we have been using Edmentum for this last several years. So it's not clear to me if that is the price that they've been paying and are assuming it will be something similar going forward, or if they just don't know because they don't know what the numbers are going forward.
Right.
The latter.
Yeah. So some years ago during the Rauner administration, there was a system set up to basically to track the needs of individual schools, and there are all these charts about, you know, how many teachers per how many students. But my point is, if this situation causes a lot of people to withdraw their children from the public school system, then our numbers will be down, and then it'll have a knock-on effect of our funding a couple of years afterwards, because they take the data from like 2 years ago and apply it to now.
Right, so they can project forward as they're planning.
Yeah. Tabby, are you still in earshot?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with this system of funding from the state?
I'm not. I imagine that's one reason why our district was discouraging online learning so much. But yeah, I don't know how it affects the financial situation.
Yeah. The PDF, if we are able to see it, it is kind of complex. Hopefully, if we don't, if we're not able to show it now, I'll post it on my campaign page or add it to the Facebook Live thread, so that people can see that.
Carla, I've dropped a link to it in.
Oh, great.
And in the Facebook Live.
Is that evidence-based funding?
Yes.
Thank you. That's the phrase. Evidence-based funding. Yes.
It's 34 slides long, so I don't know if you want me to show
Yeah, it's pretty big. I recommend people to just look at that in your own time and kind of see. Something that struck me is that there's absolutely no mention of a school resource officer, which is a different conversation, but I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone interested in that topic, that that's not an expectation for schools to have a school resource officer. And I do know that each individual school district has to pay for a school resource officer out of their own budget. Just an FYI.
I can think of other uses.
Well, I'm sorry, what did you say, Julie?
I can think of other uses for that money.
I can think of other use. You know, you get one, and something that struck me when I was reading that this afternoon is that you have one psychologist for every 1,000 students. So, you know, things that we could look at to make some positive changes for the future. Tabby, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to share, or?
I was just typing, actually. I guess it would be more of a question than a statement, but I'm a special ed teacher, and I have not heard a word about how special ed services are supposed to be provided during any of this.
Oh.
I imagine it's going to have to be decided after we figure out the educational setting in general.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a concern of mine as a special ed teacher, as my nephew has an IEP too, and he's doing online learning. So
Yeah.
I don't know how
Yes.
to expect us to do that.
Someone contacted me privately when my letter was circulating out there about please adding questions about IEPs, and I was afraid to add them to the list because people had already signed. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, but I made sure when I submitted, like, my cover email for attaching the letter, I mentioned her case and said, look, people are asking about IEPs. I think there's some information on our district website. There's, by law, they have to provide certain supports, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the reality of that's going to look like.
In the spring in the spring when we were doing online learning, before we really knew what we were doing, my district asked us to document basically student contact. So at that time, I was spending all of my time contacting students directly one-on-one. So before we sent everybody home, I was co-teaching classes, but then after we started doing the online learning, I really wasn't available during class time because I was working one-on-one with students, trying to get students to do what they needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how, as far as my daughter's 504, we were supposed to have the meeting in May of this year, and we haven't. So I don't know I don't really know as much about 504 as if we're out of compliance or whatever, but I was told, by the vice principal that is something that we can push back because it's more relevant when she's in school than it is with this online learning. So I don't know that they're even thinking about that right now.
Possibly, like everything, we don't know what to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like
People's
I said,
really been,
envy the decision makers right now at all.
Yeah.
I know. I do want to say I do appreciate all of the hard work that everybody is trying to do. I don't think anybody's trying to do the wrong thing. I think people are trying to figure out how to do what we can with the resources that we have. I
Right.
necessarily
I
agree with all
do.
the conclusions
Yeah.
people have come to. But it's, I don't envy anybody in the decision-making space.
Right. Right.
I just want to say something, Carla, about what you said about, for the greater good, keeping your child home for the greater good. I apologize, Julie, if that was you that said that. Someone said it.
It was Carla.
I did.
That was one of the things that we decided, because Tazewell County's numbers are not so high that I am very concerned about it. My husband, of course, is being a nurse, but, we kind of decided that she can stay home. It's not ideal, but, from what I've read, there was an article in the New York Times about offering in-person school for children who really need it. My nephew probably needs it, but really shouldn't be around that many people with the masks and the things distracting him. But my daughter can stay home. And so I feel like if you can stay home, if your child can stay home, keep them home for the greater good, for those students, who do have really a hard time focusing at home or, have abusive situations or can't be fed at home or whatever, if you can keep your child home, I definitely think that's the best thing to do.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Kelsey, are there any more questions or comments?
There aren't any comments from viewers, but Carla, I think one of the things you wanted to talk about was, if you still wanted to, was if you have anyone at home that might have health concerns and if that really played a part into your decision making. And Tabby, that kind of sparked because you had just shared that, your partner is a nurse, and so did that kind of calculate into your thinking any at all? And just in general, did that weigh on your decision at all?
Me personally, no, because, my husband's been very concerned about this from the beginning. He's also kind of pretty concerned about the flu and things like that. So we've been very strictly staying home since March. but not because we have anyone in our home with underlying health conditions. All of our parents, grandma and grandpa they probably wouldn't do well if they caught it. But we're already distancing from them. We're distancing from my niece and nephew as well. But, like I said, for the greater good, I think to stop the spread, slow the spread, that's really what weighed on my decision. I've been very kind of nervous about it and really paying attention to the numbers, but lately I've been talking to more parents who are making the decision to send their children to school, but also have fear still. And so I've been kind of trying to talk to them about our hospitalizations aren't really getting much higher. Our death count in Tazewell County has not increased. I know somebody whose children are younger than 10, and I know that younger than 10, the science is still showing that they're not as susceptible. I do know that above 10, they're pretty much like adults. So I've really been super on the fence about it, but not because anyone in my home has medical issues.
Yeah. And Julie, do you have any medical issues in your house that played into your decision making? Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, Julie, you're muted.
Sorry, there was noise going on in the other room, so I was muting and texting people to turn on the light.
Yeah.
We don't have any immediate in our house, real vulnerabilities that I worry about too much. I would like to see my parents again. And my parents are older, and so, makes it more difficult to think about arranging a visit if my children have been in school in person.
Yeah, same. I think everybody's feeling that stress and that I'm not sure what the right vocabulary word is, but just missing that human contact, and I don't think I've ever gone this long without a grandma visit for my son.
Yeah.
Do you have parents that are in the area, or would you have to travel to see them anyway?
No, my mom lives in the area. My dad lives nearby. Both of them would not do very well, but we've been, for the most part, socially distancing from them. Yeah, my sister-in-law has been sending her children to their grandparents for babysitting purposes, so that's kind of a concern a little bit. That was something that I had discussed with my sister-in-law about A-Day, B-Day. Some districts are doing, the, what do they call it? The hybrid model or whatever.
Yes, like 2 days in person, 3 days at home.
Yeah, and just the amount of exposure increase that would cause, if children have to go to their grandparents on B days, then just all that extra exposure, I feel like is not the best choice.
Right. I'm going to put Kelsey on the spot just for a minute, because your Unit 5 is it the same as U-High for Julie's son, that it's like 2 days in person, 3 days two days a week in person and 3 days at home?
Yeah, sorry. Both my kids would be in elementary school, so they would be either full in person or full remote. So.
Oh, I see.
Right.
For elementary, so for elementary, it's all one or all the other.
Right. Yeah. So
got it.
It kind of split up, and then as you get up into junior high and high school, that's when it goes to kind of that two-day model. I believe it's junior high and high school, but
okay.
For the levels, really that under age 13 is where they really trying to get people back in person or full remote. So those were the
Right, one or the other. Okay.
Yeah,
And
NetCap might be that way too. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
so Julie and I have to decide on Tuesday, August 4th. We have to decide, we have to make a decision by Tuesday, August 4th. And if we don't make a decision, they will assume that we're doing in-person learning. That's the way District 87 has worded it. So Tabby, what is your decision that you, like, what's your deadline to?
The registration was yesterday. We had pre-registration last Sunday. I think that was just for them to get a pre-idea. But they have also sort of inadvertently explained that it's not a final decision. Yes, you can transition back and forth. I don't think that they want that to be known, but
Okay.
you know, you can transfer schools in the middle of a semester, so why couldn't you transfer from, you know, one to the other? If it's absolutely not working, then I think that they will allow you to change. But yeah, our decision's already been made. School starts a week from this coming Tuesday.
Okay. And Kelsey, does Unit 5 have a deadline for making a decision?
Yeah, so they published an original deadline and then they extended it, and then we received a Unit 5 robocall today explaining that there would be more information being released over the weekend. So at this point, I'm not quite sure what the final deadline is for making a decision in Unit 5.
Right.
Because it's
okay.
changed a bit. But I think based on the Unit 5 school board meeting where we had a wonderful high school student stand up and speak very eloquently about the AP choices, they've now done some reworking of AP.
Good.
You know, courses in specific that they're going to be releasing some more information this weekend is what the
right. I'm very glad to hear that, because you know, anybody with kids in high school who we're looking forward to those AP classes, you know, we don't want that opportunity taken away from them. So I'm very glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear, first of all, that a high school student is the one who stood up and advocated for that. And I'm also very glad to hear that the Unit 5 school board took that seriously.
Yeah, and then Deva had posted a comment that they've been in their grandkids circle since March, but when they do go back, they're, you know, not quite sure what to do, you know, when that happens. So feeling lots of feelings all the way around. Yes,
it's very difficult. All right. Does anybody else have anything to share? And were there any more questions or comments?
That is all of the questions and comments.
Okay. Okay. Tabby, did you have any last thoughts to share at this time?
No, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. And on Monday, we're going to have a conversation centered around the teacher experience.
Okay.
I'm still working on trying to get teachers to come on and talk about either the choices or the not choices that the teachers have been given. And honestly, I can't really expect a current working teacher to be able to talk freely about their current working situation.
Yeah, I think they're not very free to do so.
Right. So here's my shout out. I'm interested in hearing from retired teachers. I'm interested in hearing from perhaps administrators, maybe union representatives who are free to speak about what choices are available for teachers, if there are indeed choices available for teachers, and how those things are being handled. And perhaps how as a community can we support and get behind our teachers at this time. So thank you everybody for tuning in and listening, and thank you to Tabby and Julie. And again, thank you, Julie, so much for taking all those frustrations and all those things rattling around in your head, like, oh my gosh, what about this and what about this, and putting them into that document and sharing it and allowing us to sign it. And thank you to District 87 for answering those questions.
And Unit 5 has also provided responses, so I will share both those documents.
That is really great to hear. Thank you so much, Julie. And thanks again,
Thank you for having me on.
Yep. All right. Good night, everybody.